My name's Joe, for those of you that have not met me before. I got my start, with Google for your domain. This has got to be something like 16 years ago now. It was pretty much just Gmail and your custom domain name. I spent a bunch of times as a young entrepreneur, then went over into our wonderful services partner ecosystem, had a lot of fun there, got to spend some time as a SaaS administrator for Workspace and other SaaS applications for enterprises, and now I get to help strategic partners build stuff. So I'm going to be referring to the Workspace Marketplace throughout this whole presentation, but the majority of the content's applicable whether you're going to be publishing there or just building an integration, even if you don't intend to list it there. This crazy AI moment that we're all living through right now has gotten a lot of folks much more interested in building Workspace integrations. I was talking to Stephen about it this morning. So in the spirit of innovation there, I'm going to share what I think are like the essential bits of knowledge for quickly and successfully navigating the Workspace Marketplace review. So first tip, you aren't actually done. You've not submitted unless you have seen this screen and you click the submit button. If you think that you've submitted your application and this is not familiar, please go back because you haven't actually done it yet. Fair warning, through the review process, the only way to communicate with our Google Trust and Safety team, who owns the review process, is over an email thread that they're going to start with owners and editors of the project, and also a support email address that you get to put in for your application. That is it. You don't get video calls. There's no phone number. There are no smoke signals or carrier pigeons available. You get the email thread. So make sure that you have your owners and editors up to date before you hit the submit button. And also, please don't wait to respond. If you want to keep this moving forward, the onus is really on you. They're not going to come proactively check in and see how you're doing. They work with sometimes hundreds of applications at a time. This is the best case timeline that you're going to see going through the process, especially if you use restricted scopes. It's going to take longer. They don't have an official SLA for how long it will take you to get through that. We'll talk a little bit more about restricted scopes later, but in my personal, not official capacity experience working with partners, I see the restricted scope process for our enterprise partners usually at about 10 weeks or so. So please build that in as a possibility. And you're your best advocate here, okay? Our reviewers it's their job to be critical of your scope choices. It's their job to be critical of the name that you've chosen for your application, your homepage, your privacy policy. It's a lot of critique to take in over an email thread. So the better prepared you are ahead of the process, the smoother that it is going to go. The first piece where I'll show you an example from one of our awesome partners, Lumaps. This is an example of their most recent chat application. This brand verification process covers a lot of things, not just the name. So if you are not sure what logo to use or exactly what phrasing to use for the name of your app, check out Partner Marketing Hub, check out Partner Advantage. Honestly, the name is something that I see happen a lot. If they had tried to call this the chatty Lumaps integration, that's not going to fly. Please, this terminology is going to get approved 10 times out of 10. One of the other really common misconceptions that I see is homepage. It's really easy to think that when the trust and safety team says, hey, you need to put your homepage link in there, it's easy to say that, oh, that's the top level domain name for my company. That's my homepage. That is not necessarily what they're asking for. They are asking for a homepage for the application or the integration that you've created, because they need to see some specific things on it. They need to see what it does, how it interacts with whatever Google Workspace application that you've done the integration with, not necessarily your top level. And also another chance to shout out our wonderful partner, Lumaps. Also, important tip, you need to verify ownership for all the domains that you use in your submission. So for this, if they'd submitted marketplace.lumaps.com, even though it's a subdomain, that's considered a separate domain name, they would need to prove with DNS records that they actually own that. So whether it's for your homepage or anything else, if you've got a domain name at all in your listing that you have submitted for approval, please make sure you've got control over the DNS records, or at least if you're in a larger company, you at least know who to talk to for that, because you're going to need it. our limited use and user privacy policy. There's a lot of stuff that gets rolled into here, and we take the privacy and the security of user data really seriously. It's a big deal that that 11 million plus businesses have trusted us with their data, and it gets. I think you'll see that, and it's frustrating, but also great. You'll see that as you go through the review process for your application. It is taken really seriously. You've got two choices, but you can address that in two ways. You can either just incorporate it into your overall privacy policy. Plenty of companies do that. If you're in a larger enterprise, that means going through internal counsel or someone. It can be a whole bunch of steps, so make friends with your lawyers. The other option that you have is to take that language and make sure it's reflected on the home page for your application that you submitted earlier. You can do both if you want to do that, but it's got to be somewhere public that the review team can see. Here's an example of what both of those look like. So this is on the top is OpenText. They went the route. I did a Google Drive integration with them a couple of years ago. They made a brand new section in their official privacy policy to put all of this language. Took a while to make that happen. Zoho, on the other hand, decided to put the language on their homepage for all of their integrations. And they just made one that is all-encompassing enough to cover what they've already made and what they could potentially make going forward. But you got to address it some way. There are specific terminology in the limited use policy that addresses AI, and you need to make sure that you are compliant with that as well. I've listed the big ones here. There's much more, though, if you check out the AI ML use case list. Do me a favor, if you are about to submit or you're already submitted and you haven't gotten to this step yet, please, 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 please review the AI ML use case list that's published publicly before you respond to Google Trust and Safety. Because if you tell them that you intend to build something that's not allowed on that list, that's going to be the end of your review process. So check that. Make sure you're doing something that is compliant with how it's been structured. Pro tip, here's an example from our partner Intuit, who I've gotten to work with a whole bunch over the last few years as well. They added it directly into their privacy policy, but just the same as the example that you saw from OpenText and Zoho, you can add it to your homepage. It just has to be somewhere public, and it has to have the correct language. And that's here's a great example of that. So please, this is public, nothing confidential here. Head to their page, and you can see it for yourself. The best advice that I can possibly give to folks, if you are thinking about using restricted scopes, is don't. If you're using restricted scopes, actually, let me back up for a second, just in case that folks aren't super familiar with what I'm talking about for scopes at all. So the simplest way that I like to think of it in my head is that an APIs into any of our products, Gmail, Calendar, Chat Drive, whatever, they kind of define what you can do. And we have those bundled into API scopes, which define what your app is allowed to do with user data that they have consented for. So you can do a lot with what we consider restricted scopes. You can read everything that's in especially if you've used domain-wide delegation, which was talked about in an earlier presentation as well. You can act on behalf of anyone in the organization and read everything that's in their Gmail. You may need to for the app, or Drive, or Calendar, or whatever it is. But if you can take a break and take a little bit of a step back, review what's available outside of the restricted scopes and see what might be a sensitive scope or a non-sensitive scope that you could use in a creative fashion instead, there's tremendous upside. It's just going to save you so much time and energy. Not to mention, it's free if you are not using restricted scopes. We'll get to that in a minute too. If you've already developed an app and you're using restricted scopes, you've got two choices. You can go back to the app you thought was complete, and try and get creative about not using those restricted scopes, or you can just know that what you're about to enter is the hard mode of application review processes, and you are going to have to prove a whole lot more than you thought you were going to need to prove that those restricted scopes are necessary. And there's also a third-party review that comes along for the ride. It is still not short for Casa Bonita, the only restaurant where you can watch cliff divers jump 25 feet off a waterfall while you eat sopapillas. It's the Cloud Application Security Assessment. It's not free, so don't feel bad about shopping around. The vendors are available publicly on the CASA website. Reach out to them. My best advice for you here, this is something that I see a lot of partners get stuck in, is if you make changes to your application as you go through the review process, if you add scopes, if you add or remove functionality, please tell them. They won't know because you submit everything up front and says, here's my app, review it. If you're making changes that haven't gotten to them, they're not going to know that that needs to now be a part of your review process. You could unintentionally make this much longer than it needs to be. So please stay in communication with those third-party reviewers. Also, CASA is not done when you get that letter of certification at the end of the process. That gives you a cert for 12 months. At the end of a year, you need to go back through the process again. And please, this is the one that I see the most for the yearly annual renewal for CASA that gets folks tripped up, especially in larger organizations, but it could be applicable for companies of any size. A lot can happen in a year. Your owners might change, the editors on the project might change, there might be a whole bunch of turnover, that whole piece of the company might not exist anymore. Please try and set up processes so that the owners and the editors get reviewed regularly, because if the team does need to reach out to you, either for your CASA renewal or any other reason, those are the folks that are going to get the email. And if those people don't work for your company anymore, then that means no one's going to know that something important needs to happen. I'm going to run through some very specific partner examples that I think are great things to emulate. There might be one surprise in here, but I think it's important to call them out a second time. So if you missed your picture the first go around, now's your chance. Homepage. It might be your actual top-level domain homepage. It might not be. Please make sure that you know how to change the DNS records, that you can prove that you own it, and that the information that they need is actually listed on it. Limited use and privacy policy. This terminology, this language has got to be added somewhere public. It can't be a private page. It can't be on a Facebook marketplace listing or a Craigslist post. It's got to be somewhere on a domain that you own, but it can either be your privacy policy or a separate page. AI, also very, very important going forward. There is specific terminology that you've got to make sure that you reflect, and check the use case list. Please check the use case list. The biggest problem that I have seen over the last year and a half as these tools have gotten really quite good are folks being really excited about building something. Maybe they've already spent hundreds of hours building it, but it's on the list of things that you cannot do with end user data and AI. Please don't waste all that effort. Check the list first. This is the new one. So really, I worked with Workday. There should be a better way to say that. I don't like saying work twice in the same sentence. I helped them build a Google Sheets integration, which is going live shortly, over like the last year and a half. And very, very early in the process, we realized that the restricted scope would be great for them to use, but their internal processes around user data and privacy and security are just as challenging as ours. So we spent a lot of extra time up front to architect a different way to make sure that their needs were met that did not require the use of restricted scopes. And it was 100% worth it. So if this is at all possible for you, please spend that extra time. We use some sensitive scopes instead, and it's great. Had we gone the restricted scope route up front, I'm not at all convinced that they would be releasing it in limited availability in November, if at all. And then pitch. I don't know if anybody uses Workday Adaptive Planning. It's a specific piece of the Workday suite. If you do, go ahead and sign into Workday Community, because they've got some posts in there for how to join the limited availability, which is just next month. And it's really cool. If you use Google Sheets and if you use adaptive planning, you could do a two-way sync. There's AI stuff that's powered by Gemini. It's fantastic. So I shared that your reviewers will challenge your use of restricted scopes, but that doesn't just mean that you can throw every other scope at the wall and see what sticks. As you go through the review process, you're gonna need to prepare scope justification. So for every scope that's in your project that you're using or that you've told them you're gonna use, I would just say put together a single bullet point of what the scope is and what we're doing with it. That's it. You don't need to go crazy. If you can document this during the development process, that's better. But if you already passed that and you got to go back retroactively, that's okay too. But have it, because they're going to challenge you on all of them. And it's not because they don't like you. They need to make sure that what you're doing with the user data is actually what you said you're doing. Okay, a good demo video, which is also a thing that you're going to have to do, has a handful of components in it which you're going to want. And I see this get missed a lot. It needs to show at the top the whole sign-in flow for the OAuth grant process for an end user. So you need to show what it looks like for someone who's never used it before to click the buttons and sign in and say, I give it these permissions and I'm signed into the app. I see a lot of jump cuts in cases that get escalated to me of people hitting the sign-in button and then nothing happens and you fade to black and then now they're using the application and they don't see the scopes that they've approved. That's going to get you rejected immediately. You need to see the whole flow from start to finish. And it's important because your reviewers are going to go back through and do this themselves. Later in the process, they're going to ask for a test account, or they'll give you an account to allow list, and you're going to need to sign into that, or they're going to need to sign into it rather, so that they can use your application and prove that the things that you showed off in the demo video are actually what you're doing with end user data. This is a good one. There is a place called the OAuth Verification Center. Please bookmark it. You can find it from your OAuth consent screen. This is what it looks like. It's an old screenshot, sorry, but this is still what it looks like. This is the closest that you're going to get to a dashboard for where you are in the review process, because otherwise, remember, you're just interacting with Google Trust and Safety over that single email thread. There's no other place other than this that you can go to say, did I finish brand review? Did they say we were good, or did we just move on to the next step and we're going to have to revisit that at some point? Look here. It's very, very important. I cannot express how many partners I've seen get stuck in this particular spot. Your scopes live in a lot of different places. They can be in your OAuth consent screen. They can be in the Marketplace SDK in the Cloud Console. If you're using AppScript, they can be in your add-on manifest. They can be in your application code regardless of what language you've written in. Wherever you have declared scopes, please make sure they're the same, because you could get stuck in a really weird, confusing thread spinning your wheels with the trust and safety team where they're saying, tell us why you're using this, and you're saying, I'm not. We're not using that scope for anything because it was in a line in your code that was supposed to be commented out and it wasn't. They can be coming from anywhere that you could possibly have scopes. Make sure they're the same, please. This is great if you were moving to a much more granular consent process from, well, a couple of years ago, honestly, through January 2026. I think it's great for end users to be able to say, I just want this app to use my Drive data, and I don't really want it to do anything with Google Calendar. I know that respectful disagreements in 2025 isn't what it used to be, but it's really essential to getting through this process quickly and efficiently. So please be patient, be as clear as you can, but don't be afraid to be persistent. If the reviewers don't understand what you are trying to say, it's not because they hate you. It's likely because they just don't understand what you are trying to tell them. So try another take at it. Try and explain things a different way. Don't worry about, ask for documentation, ask for examples. If you feel like there is a miscommunication happening, there almost certainly is. It is not their job to just say no to every app that is requested for review. Just try and take a breather. If it's possible, assume positive intent. If it's not, at least know there will be miscommunications, and you are likely going to have to restate things or ask them to restate things a different way. On that note, there's a whole bunch of resources. This is a pretty good spot. A lot of the documentation from my presentation came from here.